Welcome back, everybody, to the next episode of Sports Talk with Hawk. How are we doing on this beautiful Wednesday evening? I tell you what, the last couple nights, it's gotten a little nippy outside. It's gotten just a wee bit nippy last night while I was rolling around and working. It got down to 34 degrees. Got the ice warning to come up on my truck, and I was like, ha ha, well, here we go. Here we go. Weather is a coming. And I tell you what, I love the progression of seasons as we move from fall into winter. I know that gets me shot by most people, but um, I do love the wonderful cycle of the world that we live in, and I do. I enjoy the seasons here in Indiana. It's always a blast. Always a blast. It'll be a gorgeous weekend, mid 70s all weekend, and I will be actually at the Colts and Dolphins game this weekend. So, super excited about that. Can't wait for this weekend. But before we get there, we got a couple different things to chat about. So, let's talk about some trade news, and then we'll get into this week's 3 and 3. So, the two trades that took place. Number one, Davante Adams over hanging out at Aaron Rodgers' house gets traded from the 2-4 Raiders to the 2-4 Jets. Now, the entire thing with this is they're both the same record. They are not both the same team in a sense. The Ravens do have that wild victory over the Ravens on their resume. And the Jets have beaten Will Levis, Jacoby Brissett, and they've lost to Sam Darnold. They've lost to now Josh Allen, Bo Nix. They've struggled in a couple different areas. They lost opening week to the San Francisco 49ers. In none of those games is Davante going to potentially help? Yes. Could Davante cause more issues? Yes. And here's why. Aaron Rodgers is old. He's an old man. He's getting older. He's cranky. He threw Mike Williams under the bus for an underthrown ball from himself to Williams where he slips and he falls. You underthrew the dang ball. If Mike Williams doesn't have to stop and make a bodily move, now Mike Williams has not been Chargers Mike Williams whatsoever. I'll give you that. But Garrett Wilson has laid out everything. Garrett Wilson has laid out and put himself on the line for you. He didn't need Davante, but he got him. So now if the Jets fail, it's Rodgers' fault. It's no longer Saleh's fault. He's already fired. Not going to blame the interim head coach. Excuse me. Good grief. This is Rodgers' team now. He's got Lazard. He's got Adams. They're going to be trading Hassan Reddick to get more draft picks. They aren't in a position to beg. That's the thing. They aren't in a position of power with Hassan Reddick. So if Detroit offers a third or fourth round pick for him, you have to take it. That's the position they're in. I don't believe the Jets. I don't think they improve much more than one win. I don't. I don't think they improve much more than one win. And the reason for that is I don't think their defense is going to be as sharp. The best defensive coach got fired. Jeff Ulbrich is now having to learn something on the go. With being head coach and defensive coordinator, the defensive play caller, that's a lot to put on somebody. I hope he's able to figure it out. It's going to be a transition time. Buffalo looked control. Let's just be real here. Without the Hail Mary, and a Hail Mary is a luck play. So without the Hail Mary, you're down at half 20-10. Let's be realistic. So because of that, Hail Mary, which was a gorgeous pass and the same thing that's happened every other time, the guy that's coming into the pile from the 2-yard line is the guy that catches it. You can't just be standing back there, because if everybody's eyes on the ball, they're not going to call pass interference when everybody's going up. So I don't think the game outcomes change much. I think the defense is going to be worse. I think the offense will be better. Davante Adams improves the offense, but I don't think it's a swing of more than one win. There's no reason to believe there is. And a point I brought up when I was talking to one of my buddies last night, a point that I brought up is the two teams that made the moves were the two teams that just played on Monday Night Football. The Bills GM came out of that W going, and if you watch the game, and I'm going to break down a little bit of film for you here. I rewatched the game. I watched every snap with Buffalo. Josh Allen always looks at Keon. He does. He always looks at Keon. At the snap of the ball, he always glances to Keon's side to see what he thinks the coverage may be. Keon had sauce on him. Keon was not left alone most of the game. The Bills trade for Amari Cooper. They get him out of the unfortunate circumstance of Cleveland, which is now Jerry Jeudy's show. But they get him out of Cleveland. And the way it looks now, you have Amari Cooper as the one. That's not Stephon Diggs. He's not going to be boisterous. He's an Alabama Nick Saban guy. You're paying him basically nothing. But you can pay him next year when that Von Miller contract disappears. So now you've got Amari Cooper able to take pressure off of Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman will get more looks now. This offense, who without their top running back, looks really good. It was a windy night. It was a gritty game. The reality is, Buffalo saw that game. Their GM goes, we need one. We're missing something on offense. Curtis Samuel is not a wide receiver two. We brought him in to be a receiver two. He's not. He's a slot guy. He's a gadget guy. Joe Brady can use him in that fashion, the same way that the Colts use Josh Downs. The same way the Lions use Jameson Williams. Like, that is Curtis Samuel. This gives the Bills, number one, it opens up play calls. Number two, it gives them the ability to be a prototypical offense. They can now go 3 receiver, 1 tight end, 1 running back. In shotgun, in single back, they can go I form and put Dawson Knox in front of James Cook if they want to. Like, that's where we're at now with this team. So the Buffalo Bills vastly improve who they are with this trade with the Browns for Amari Cooper. They don't give up the bank. They're good. They're really good. All right. So this week's 3 and 3 for those of you who may not have listened to a podcast before for this segment, 3 W's and 3 L's. The 3 W's are 3 teams that lost last week that need a win this week. We're getting into week 7, so the herd is definitely starting to thin out. But the trades have started happening. The Seahawks made a trade for a defensive tackle. We had 2 big receiver trades already. Who knows what the rest of this week could, claim, because they don't want to wait. Aiden Hutchinson's injury is real. I know the Giants have now lost Andrew Thomas indefinitely. Like, there's a couple injuries that are popping up that are going to make the trades happen faster. And we saw them happen already this week. Congrats to the teams that jumped on them and got them going. What you need to do. Hassan Reddick's going to be moving. Max Crosby may or may not be moving. Any of the Arizona Cardinals players at this point could be moving. Not going to lie. It's really where I'm at with that. But nonetheless, so 3 W's, 3 teams that got a loss last week that need a win this week, and then 3 L's, 3 teams that won last week that have to avoid a bad loss this week. They need to keep the train rolling. All right, let's jump into it. This is Wednesday night for you guys. We're going to start out with the 3 W's. So teams that lost last week that need a win this week. Team number 1, the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars need a win in London over the New England Patriots. They have to show that they're not that bad. Because currently they're that bad. But I will say this roster is too dang good to be sitting here at 1-5. Like, it's way too good to be sitting here at 1-5. Doug Peterson, I believe, should be fired relatively soon. Now, I do not like their defensive coordinator. I don't think their defensive coordinator is putting Walker in the correct positions. I don't think that defense is running the correct scheme for the skill set of the players. So I don't like the defensive coordinator. Doug Peterson's offense looks old. Very just almost stoic of an offense. Nothing exciting, nothing new, innovative, engineered. Like it's just plain boring and old. And even the Colts game, all they did was run wheel routes, screens, like this. Come on, come on. You've got two tight ends that are really good. You've got a definitely decent receiving core. Brian Thomas is an absolute stud. He will be your receiver number one. You bring in an offensive coordinator, Brian Thomas Jr., next year will be a stud. But the Jaguars need to win this week in London over the New England Patriots. They have to. They need that W. Now, another team that needs a W after a loss last week. I like this. I like where this potentially could head. I don't think they will, but the Saints need a W if they're going to keep pace in the NFC South. They play tomorrow night, Thursday Night Football, against the Broncos. They need to win if they want to hold on to any chance of making the playoffs or being in that division race. I don't think they will. I think the Broncos go in there. I think Sean Payton, just who Sean Payton is, will go in there. He'll have a plan. Spencer Rattler will probably be starting again. The defensive coordinator will have a plan to slow them down. Alvin Kamara. I believe Denver will pull out the W. Bo Nix may have his second best game of the year. Maybe his best game of the year. I don't know. Receivers are working into it. Nix is getting more and more comfortable. I like where it's going. But the Saints need a W to keep themselves in a legitimate race. I don't think they will, but they need it. They need it because Atlanta and Tampa Bay are rolling right now. They're winning. They need a W. And then the third and final team that needs a W after last week, after a loss last week, is the Washington Commanders. They got the Carolina Panthers. It's big. They got the Carolina Panthers at home after a game against the Ravens. So you're not traveling very far. It was legitimately just up the road. Big deal. Now you got to come back home and you need to continue on with what everyone has seen. You've got a big week this week. The Cowboys are off. Philly plays the Giants on the road. And that Philadelphia Eagles team is a mess right now. An absolute mess. Remember, the Giants beat them last year. This isn't out of the question. It's a division game. Brian Daboll knows what this team can do. The offense has looked anemic. Smith and Brown had a bunch of catches, yards, and they only beat the Browns 20-16. The weather's changing. The offensive line hasn't been as great. And I'm sure the Giants would love to get a W over a division rival. here in week number 7 to prove they're not just a pushover. I didn't think they were a pushover against Cincinnati. I thought that was a really hard-fought game. I still think it comes down to the quarterback. But either way, if you're Washington, you've got division opponents playing each other, and you never know what's going to happen in those games. And if you're Washington, which is currently going for a number 1 spot in that division, you need to beat Carolina. It was a really good loss against Baltimore. It was a very good loss against Baltimore. You need to get back on the winning track against Carolina as we continue to move forward through the NFL schedule for Washington Commanders. All right, 3 L's. 3 teams that won last week that need to avoid a bad loss. 3 teams that won that need to avoid a bad loss. Number 1, the Indianapolis Colts. You beat the Titans on the road with Joe Flacco. All indications are Anthony Richardson is going to start this weekend. You can't lose to Miami. Now, what scares me about this game is that Miami is coming off of a bye. Most teams don't like having a bye this early in the season. They're without Tua. So McDaniel was then able to work on stuff after getting the win over the Patriots the week before. He was then able to take 2 weeks, and so was that coaching staff, to get ready for the Indianapolis Colts. What does that mean? Well, they know where we suck, and they know where they can take advantage of things. The reality is, if I'm Miami, I'm running the ball a lot, and I'm talking 32 times. I'm going to run. I'm going to let a Kane. I'm going to let Mostert. I'm going to let Jalen Wright. I'm going to let Huntley run. I'm going to give Cheetah the ball in the backfield. I'm going to do screens here, screens there, swings here, reverse this. I'm going to make this entire game be on the ground except for 6 to 8 plays, and that's going to be plays where I'm trying to break a big one and get a deep bomb downfield. The Colts secondary isn't great. The defensive line definitely isn't great. Attack them, go after them, run the ball. It's been done a lot this year. The Colts can't let it happen, though. They need to avoid this loss. They have got the Vikings, the Texans, the Bills upcoming. They got the Lions coming up. They're going to go 0-4 in the next 4 games. They need this win. I predict them to be 5-12. They win this game, they get 4 wins. And they could only have one more win on the schedule the rest of the way out. They easily could. Very plausible. So number 1 team that needs to avoid an L after a win last week is the Indianapolis Colts. The second team that needs to avoid an L after a win last week, the Los Angeles Chargers. You beat the Denver Broncos in a division matchup, which you need to do. You've beaten the Raiders as well. So there, you've done what you've needed to do. Here's the problem. You can't go to Arizona now and lay a flat goose egg. And I know there's so many people out there like, Jim Harbaugh won't let this happen. No, listen. The team. This isn't college, guys. This isn't Nick Saban. The coaches control a lot more in college than do the NFL. The NFL, it's all adults. Come on. These are grown guys. Let's just be real here. If the defense is not on point, Kyler Murray, James Conner, Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride, they can put up some points. They can absolutely put up some points on you. So if you're not going to play crisp defense, you can end up in a shootout. And I don't know that injury that Herbert has. Here's the reality. I don't know if it's going to ever flare up, when it's going to flare up. So you need to, as the Chargers team, you need to avoid a bad loss on the road against Arizona. And you need to win to make sure you can keep pace with the Kansas City Chiefs. It's the other thing. So you've got to avoid that bad loss. Now, this game is going to be, you can question if this game should be in 3-3, and I'll let you do that. But I think after the win last week and the current stretch where they've beaten the Saints, they've beaten the Bucks, they've beaten the Panthers. You now have 3 division wins if you're the Atlanta Falcons. That is huge. And the current streak needs to continue. Seattle, after they get a little bit of a longer because they played on Thursday night, the Seattle Seahawks coming to Atlanta. Atlanta needs to avoid a loss to the Seahawks. And here is why. The Seahawks are the team the Falcons, in a sense, are. Just reversed. The offense is what's supposed to carry. The defense is supposed to be what shows up enough. Right now, the trade for Matthew Judon has been invisible. They've only got 5 sacks this year. I don't know if it's the defensive coordinator. I don't know what it is. But whatever it may be, the Falcons need to beat Seattle. They cannot let DK Metcalf and Kenneth Walker absolutely destroy them. Now, I think this is going to be a relatively high-scoring game. When it comes down to it, I think this game is going to end up being 31-28. I think the game is going to have over 400 yards by both teams. Like, there's nothing inside of me that doesn't believe this game could be potentially high-scoring. But if you're the Falcons, when it comes down to it, you're home. You've beaten your division opponents. You beat the Eagles in a comeback win. Seattle's a playoff team. A legit playoff team. As a wild card, a legit playoff team. You need to beat them at home to continue proving your stock. That's it. To continue proving your stock. I don't think there's any other way of looking at it. So to recap, 3 teams that need a W this week: Jacksonville Jaguars, New Orleans Saints, and the Washington Commanders. Those 3 teams lost this past week. They need a W this week. That is what they need. 3 teams that need to avoid a loss. 1,000% the Indianapolis Colts need to avoid a loss to the Miami Dolphins. Second, the Los Angeles Chargers need to avoid the loss on the road against a currently inept Arizona Cardinal team. And then third and finally, the Atlanta Falcons need to continue this streak they're on and beat the Seattle Seahawks. So there's your 3 W's and 3 L's heading into week number 7 here on Sports Talk with Hawk. All right, there we go. Oh, let's see. What do we got tomorrow? What's tomorrow? Oh, tomorrow is the top 10. Woohoo! All right, tomorrow, Hawks top 10 for week number 7. Absolutely excited about that. Maybe some surprises, maybe some controversy. Actually, I don't doubt it. There will be. Um, but I tell you what, the teams are starting to separate. They are starting to separate. And you're going to see these trades kick up. I think you're going to see an outrageously active trade deadline because teams are going to understand we got to fill this hole. When you find out you have a hole, whether on defense or on offense, you have to fill it now. Like there's no question about it at this point. You have to get that that weakness covered, and everybody's starting to figure that out. So we'll see what Hawks top 10 brings tomorrow night. I appreciate each and every one of you guys for stopping by. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Make sure to subscribe, like the podcast, and ring the notification bell. That way you guys are notified every time a new podcast goes live. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. Tomorrow night we'll do Hawks top 10, and then we will. Let's see. Friday would be what then? Friday would be the picks, I believe. Or I'll do the preview of the weekend, whichever one it may be. But nonetheless, I'm excited. Got some college games that we will talk as well. So we will see what that holds. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. And until tomorrow night, for Sports Talk with Hawk, I'm Hawk, and I'm out.